Hi, everyone. This is Jeilene, and I'm here with another episode of Friends in the Field. And I'm super excited to introduce all of you today to a dear friend of mine, James Verger. James and I have known each other for several years, and we met in our really run-of-the-mill 3D lives through Friends and Kids. And James and I made a quick connection and connected on many different levels. So when I met James, I was really, not too far along in my spiritual journey, my awakening path, if you will. I had, I think at that point, taken a couple of courses, done some Reiki, and worked with our other mutual friend who lives across the street from me. And the three of us decided after making this connection with each other, and my neighbor and I had done the Reiki class together, that we wanted to start meeting and we wanted to start exploring consciousness and channeling and shamanism and all the different exciting, fun things you do when you start learning energy medicine and about the unknown and all of those things that go bump in the night, right? I'd say the three of us really, when you say James, we were really interested in things that went bump in the night at first.
Yes, we were.
That's, I know, where I came in on it. I studied witchcraft in the beginning. I was really all about, I'm going to learn some spells and I'm going to learn how
That's
to
right. Yeah, that's right. That's
make
right.
things happen. Right. It's just witchcraft is just another name for being good at manifesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, we formed a great friendship and bond and have really grown and explored consciousness and energy and interdimensional travel and everything under the sun together. And so I'm so pleased to have James here with me today because unlike me, James wasn't as blocked as a child. And James actually started having a lot of experiences. In fact, the joke was in the beginning between the three of us, Marnie, James, and I, that James was the only one that had any talents. And he was the one that could channel, and he was psychic, and Marnie and I were just along for the ride. So over time, obviously, I was able to open up to my gifts, but James sort of came preloaded. So he was always our go-to person, and he's always been as an inspiration and a source of guidance and wonderful information. He's incredibly helpful at helping myself and others to understand their relationships and also to understand their bodies and the mechanics of their bodies and how they move, because as it turns out, in his day job, James runs a very successful and large physical therapy office here in Santa Cruz. And so he's very, very busy with that, but he does find time now to channel regularly, and he started posting, which I'm very happy, some of this information. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook, right?
Just Instagram. We're still working
okay.
on the Facebook stuff.
It's called The Spirited Body, and I encourage you to find him on Instagram because his posts are fantastic. And some of the conversations James and I have been having lately are pertinent to what's going on this month in the Light Vibes community. We've been talking about the integration and embodiment of your alternate timeline energies, your other lifetimes, and some of the issues you've been grappling with in this lifetime, and how those are affecting you, and how we can start to integrate those energies so that we can gain some of that freedom for expansion, which is truly what embodiment is. We think of embodiment as instead of trying to go up and out of the body to achieve travel, interdimensional travel, to achieve higher states of consciousness, a higher vibration. It used to be that one was recommended to travel up and out of the crown chakra. But what we really understand now is that the true embodiment comes from full integration with your physical form. And indeed, Mari talks often about how the DNA is the gateway, the true gateway into all states of higher consciousness and expansion and soul evolution, because we came to be physical on this planet in collaboration with your soul energy and with Earth. And so it makes sense that the physical form is the vehicle that takes us into those higher states of understanding and evolution. And some of the information that James has been posting lately, as I said, has been really pertinent to the first phase of embodiment that Mari has shared with all of you on the Light Vibe site this month. So I'd like to first get some more information about James and have him tell you a little bit about his background and how he came to understand what was going on in his body and with his consciousness, with his psychic abilities, and then how he's parlayed that now in our ripe old age as information that can be useful for everybody, because that's where he's at now. So James, if you would, can you just tell us a little bit more about you, your life, and how this all started for you as a child?
Sure. I just, my greatest sense of when I was growing up young, I grew up in a very, very Catholic house, extremely Catholic, church every Sunday, every holy day of obligation, altar boy. I would do altar serving like sometimes 5 days a week. And then on Sunday, it was a lot. And one of the things that was very clear to me is that there was another side of things, that there was a greater force present in my life. And it wasn't just the Catholic idea of it. For me, it was much more tangible. It was much more assumed. Like I knew it in a way that other people didn't get it. And I knew it in such a way that I understood, even at 6, 7 years old, that the Catholic Church, the rituals I found, silly is not the right word. I found them unimportant. That I understood that some people needed those rituals to connect, but I also understood them to be man-made, and that they weren't directly coming from the sort of spiritual side. My experiences at the Catholic Church were very sort of affirming of my beliefs of the other side, and different beings and entities. As I got older, again, I lost my connection to the Catholic Church as a young teen, as I became more of a teen. But I understood the value of it, and I understood it as a connection. But it's this weird feeling of I don't have negative feelings towards it for those particular reasons, for their rituals, maybe for other reasons. But I always knew there was something bigger, and it was directly affecting my life and trying in some way to communicate with me. When I was 13, I was trying to practice talking to my spirit guides. I was trying to have out-of-body experiences. I have no idea where this came from. I started having experiences in the house, things moving, things disappearing, doors opening, closing, that kind of thing. I was seeing things, and my family was seeing things too. My grandfather who passed came and visited me in a dream. All these things sort of happened. And then when I went to college, everything sort of stopped. Like it started to pinch off that connection in some way. I think I was just having too much fun.
Probably too focused on the material world.
On my present environment, the physical world that I was in. And then I got married, and that was a difficult relationship to be in. And I had kids, and that just sort of consumed everything about me. Completely. Emotionally, physically, spiritually, all those things. So I literally, that was a complete pinch off of any sort of ability to exercise that part of me. Any sort of spiritual connection, it was just gone. And then when I got divorced, when I left, I began to discover that, or rediscover those feelings inside of me. And I started just doing some simple practicing. I went to a psychic for the first time in my life when I was 40. I went to a psychic, and that was interesting. And then the second time I went to a psychic was our mutual friend. And literally in the first 3 minutes, she said, let's start a meditation. I did the meditation. And in the middle of that meditation, physically, my heart, my chest just completely opened. It was this physical, I mean, it wasn't like an imagined, it was a physical feeling of my chest being opened. And that was when I understood everything on such a bigger level. That's when I understood, so much about me truly being an energetic being in the physical body. I started being able to see, as I think I've described to you, how I could tell, like, wow, this is really just a 3D make-believe picture that I'm looking at. I'm not, this isn't. So that's when it really opened up for me. And when I started then being able to channel, getting things when I wrote. And then what really put me over the edge was when, we met and we practiced every week. That's when it just sort of exploded in a way that I didn't even realize was sort of
right. It's so helpful to have friends that you can meet with and bounce ideas and do these explorations
100%.
with. I've said that a lot because that time the three of us had together was so invaluable, I think,
Yes.
in all of our growth.
Development, yeah.
And I wanted to remind you of one time, I'm pretty sure it was either after you'd had a psychic reading or it was one time when we were together, and then you had gone home afterwards and there was like this whole sea of past spirits waiting for you outside your door.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, share a little bit about that experience. I think that's a really interesting experience for people too.
I can't remember. I think it was after we met and I came home after we did our work, and I came home and it was, and it was midnight because we always met
right,
until
it was from 9 p.m. to midnight because we had to wait
and
till our
of course I
kids
don't
were
leave
in
the
bed.
light on,
Right.
And it was just I could, see, sense, see, whatever word you want to use, the people standing in my front yard just waiting for me. And, being early, I mean, even that would intimidate me even now to a certain extent. Like,
Right.
and for me, it wasn't the like, oh my God, it wasn't that. It was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I don't have, I don't have the capacity to deal with all of these people. And I'm sorry, but I can't help you. But I think, honestly, I do help them a lot because they disappeared, but I do a lot of work in my sleep with people.
Right. Yeah, as many of us do.
Right. And but I think that my favorite experience though was I came home from the psychic one time when I was meeting with Rachel, and I felt this like nagging, and I came home and I was doing laundry, and I was going from room to room picking up like the different hampers, and I walked into my bedroom and Michael was in my bedroom, like like I was like, oh my God, there's something. And I was talking to my sister on the phone, and I was like,
Archangel Michael, of course, is who
I'm like, yeah, like Archangel Michael's in my bedroom, and this is totally bizarre. Like I don't know what's going on. And she's like, well, do you need to go? And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna keep talking to you. And so, because I was like in that place where I was like, this can't be really happening. Like this isn't really, then I said, okay, I gotta go figure out what he wants. And so I went back in and he was still standing there just waiting. He's like, hey, okay, all right, let's do this. And so
and that actually, as we were exploring together and meeting, I remember that one of the first times that I was able to channel was when you were channeling Michael, and I got this like crossover or like umbrella over energy of Michael and me. I could feel it, like his energy field was in me as well. Yeah. And then that enabled me. It was like it was on that cellular level, immediately opening up my ability to hear more and to understand more, to get more of that telepathic information.
And I think what's really important, I'm going to be getting things to say as we
Exactly.
talk, because
As you
I
do.
really do. But I think the thing that they press and that you emphasized earlier, but it wasn't just that I was channeling. It was there were a number of factors present, but what they want to emphasize is it's the community that was created, the commune. It was the you, it was the me, it was a third friend, and the familiarity we had with each other, the trust we had in each other. That allows us to open ourselves even more. Because sometimes when you're alone, you may not necessarily trust yourself, or you may not be in that framework. But to have your, higher vibrational mode be resonated and sent back to you with other people in that same room, it's very powerful. And the thing that they also emphasize to me a lot is the joy that meeting with people and your friends and getting to know people and share and experience and emote and laugh has. Because, even when I look at people online that are doing their thing, it's so serious and it's so burdensome and heavy and plotting, and you're just gonna have, and it's like their whole thing with me is, no, it's easy, it's light, it is joyful, it is not serious, it's and all of those elements together help create opening and pathways for
No,
people.
totally agreed. And I think the fact that we laughed so much constantly was a gateway into those higher states,
Absolutely.
being able to feel it, because it raises your vibration so much. To
Yes.
you open up your heart,
Yeah.
you open up your joy,
Absolutely.
like you said, it flows through, all the way from the biochemical level all the way to the etheric level, and
Yes.
then you're
Absolutely.
able to kind of meet those energies that are trying to communicate with you. And when you're in that tight, I'm restricted and
Serious, or that,
constricted.
or I'm not sure, and just the act of being in a room with somebody else, and emphasize people you trust, so it takes time.
Hmm.
You have to physically open yourself up. When you're alone in your room practicing, it's a different vibe. It's not that it's invaluable, but the opening occurs because you are doing it physically, whether it's an embrace or whether it's I'm standing in front of you. And so my physical presence is open to your physical presence. And then that energy is open.
Hmm.
But that being with someone and expressing physically is a very important thing. It's
Yes, and that is why we are very hopeful that this whole situation
Will
passes
end soon.
quickly and soon. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
everyone to be healthy so that we can get this over with soon. So let's touch in a little bit about what I was talking about in the beginning about your post. You've been talking a lot about Spirit's been talking to you about letting go of attachments. And
Yes.
I thought that was a really nice dovetail with integration and embodiment,
Yes.
because you can't really fully embody your whole energy field, like your whole soul energy field, if you're holding tightly on to aspects or memories or parts of yourself. Every experience we have can create like a little eddy. If we're all flowing down this river, it's like we create these little eddies, and we can get stuck in these little eddies of energy and water that we can really get sort of overwhelmed and stuck in when something really intense has happened to us, or when we perceive that what's happened to us was very intense and that we need to, or we're very hurt and we need to respond in a particular way. We own that, right? We own somebody else's anger. We own somebody else's grief. And we become very attached to being in anger, or being, I'm broken. I've got
Right.
these problems.
Yes. Yes.
I
And
was abused in this way, therefore
yeah,
it's always my
I
hallmark.
can't function, or I'm getting a free
Yeah,
pass.
right.
And what Spirit keeps talking to me about whenever I do a reading or meet with people or when I channel stuff, when I talk specifically about attachments, is we attach to this belief, right? So we're abused, and then we say, I was abused because I was bad. Therefore, I attach myself to the idea that I am not lovable, right? Or that I am bad. Or take whichever one you want. It's just an attachment. And that idea is very, on the surface level, it's very sad, right? It's, oh, I can see that. I can see how you're struggling with that idea, right? And so the alternative is much more vulnerable. The alternative is to say, I am not bad. I am worth more than what this person thought of me. And so I am going to open myself up to the possibility of someone else feeling the same. And that takes a lot more courage and exposing yourself, right? Than this idea of I'm not lovable.
Right.
Because so in a way we are using that attachment, which is a totally valid thing to think after that experience. Does that make sense? Like it's not that it's not a valid thing to think, but at some point it becomes a belief that prevents us from being vulnerable. It actually is protecting us, even though it's hurting us at the same time. It's keeping people away. It's not allowing us to get to know someone on a deeper level, or let them get to know us on a deeper level. So that attachment creates a false sense of security. I don't have to open up the deepest part of myself and expose it. So I'm going to put this up in front. So it even though it's painful, it's not as painful or as risky as me being open up to the idea that someone could love me, or that someone out there does think that I'm worthwhile. And it's just an important concept to understand that when we have an attachment, we defend it like crazy.
Yes.
That when anyone touches any subject near, for example, this person that thinks that they're not lovable, they start to defend the fact that they're not lovable, and they get anything that comes near it. There's a defense. The responses are angry. They're high emotion. They're frustrated. They're prickly. They're all those things, and it's this weird identification with that attachment that prevents them from progressing and exposing who they truly are, which is what we're here to do.
Exactly.
Like our main, that's our whole reason for being here. That's it. Like, how do we move all the garbage out of the way so that we can move forward with our soul shining through us, and letting our soul guide us, letting our soul direct our emotions, because that's the situation we were born into, and that's how we progress ourselves. That's how we progress the rest of the universe. That's how we progress our community, is by exposing our soul and moving forward with that exposure, with that leading our decisions and leading our way.
Right. Exactly. Totally agreed. What's happening at the microcosm is happening at the macrocosm, and everything is affecting each other. So what have your guides, Mari offered an exercise this month to do to begin to let go of some of the past life trauma that comes seeping through and shows up, of course, on your doorstep when you arrive here and begin living life. So what have your guides suggested to you as a nice way, or an effective way of starting to ameliorate some of these attachments?
It's really silly, because my mind, they have this phrase they keep saying. It's called acknowledge and drop. And I always think of Bend and Snap from Legally Blonde, because that's where my mind goes.
I just saw that movie again recently with my daughter. So great.
You understand what
I do. The Bend and Snap.
Right? I think it's funny. And so basically what they're saying is you you have to understand that the attachments that you have here are always attached to other, I should say connected instead of using the same word twice, connected to different expressions or this expression. And those issues that you need to work through are your attachments. Does that make sense? So they would say your issue is connected to an attachment. How can we rewind to find out what that attachment is? And there are a handful of real basic attachments. So
and those basic attachments would be what? Like, I'm not lovable. I'm
not lovable. I'll always be alone. I'm a loss of identity is a big one. No one will know who I am, or I'm going to lose who I am if I don't continue to maintain XYZ, my status, my job, my relationship, that's another big one, loss of identity. Always being alone, being powerless, which is sort of like losing your identity. They all sort of center around those few things, and how people interpret them or how it shows up in their life. Like, I was working with someone the other day, and she had a really strong attachment to justice, and that, that I have, if no one is going to stand up for the people doing wrong, I have to. And if they're winning because they're doing something wrong, then that means I'm losing. And so it was her how she viewed so many things was always in this view of right and wrong. Right. And if wrong people are succeeding, that means I'm losing. And so she was attached to this idea that people that are doing wrong by her rules shouldn't win. So it's complex, but it goes in that, to me, that would go in the loss of identity category. If we get down to the root, that was just like the surface. And then, but to answer your question more pointedly, you have to first acknowledge the attachment that you have. And so that's not always an easy task to do. That to me, I think, is the biggest stumbling block for people, is being able to identify that it is an attachment for them. And I find that when I work with people, it takes them, I can say to them, oh, this is what it seems like your attachment is. This is what I'm getting. And usually it's like, no, I don't know. And then as they continue to talk, they'll say exactly what they are telling me, like 5 minutes later, they'll be like, well, yeah, it just really makes me mad when I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what I just said. But, so one of the couple ways that you can look at attachments or to identify one are thoughts that, if you can begin to think about an episode where you were triggered emotionally, where you became sad or you became angry, something that hurt you, and think about why. What does that feed into? So it might feed into, I'm always going to be alone. So there's a couple ways to identify attachment. Attachments are usually future focused. I will never. I will always. Those are like big things, because those aren't real, right? Like it
doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist yet. And let's say they did exist. If you believe every possibility existed, there's an infinity of other responses that can happen.
Right.
So why are we focused on one?
And not a very good one.
And why pick a bad one?
Why pick a bad one? Exactly. Who's in charge here anyway?
So one is future focus is one way to identify it. And the other way to focus to understand it is another identifier is that it's usually valued based on an external source. I'll never have as much as, or I'll never, be wealthy enough. I'll never have a relationship like. There's lots of comparison with an external, an outside person or event or a source. It's not internally, it's not a belief that is the core of who you are. And there's a way to tell the difference. There's a lot here. This is just there's so much to talk about. A really good way to tell the difference between an attachment and a belief is an attachment is going to have emotional charge. A belief will not, because there is a belief comes from a true belief, and maybe belief isn't exactly the right word, but a foundational concept of who you are as a energetic being, as a soul. There is no arguing it.
Right, your inner truth.
You're right. There's no reason to get inflamed about it, because what's there to argue? The sky is blue. Who's gonna passionately argue that the sky is blue? It's just an accepted thing. And so when you start to function from that accepted, truthful, inarguable place that only is validated by you, all the emotion is taken away. So there's no manic points. So that is also a way that they ask you to say, so when you identify that attachment, let's say you identify that attachment, your job is to recognize it, acknowledge it, and say, oh, I'm taking this rejection from this person. Let's say you're dating, right? I'm taking this rejection from this person that I'm dating as an affirmation of I'll always be alone. That's what I'm attached to. So I'm going to take it in that way. And with my depression, anger, sadness, whatever, when I feel that coming up inside me, I can acknowledge, oh, the reason I'm sad is because I'm attaching it to this idea that I'll always be alone. And I don't have to react. Oh, I'm reacting that way. And you just go, oh, that's where I'm at. And you drop it. So they call it acknowledge and drop. You acknowledge that where it's coming from or what it's attached to, what vibrational ribbon, what cord it just plucked. And you just, no, I'm not going to react from that place. I'm acting like this is true, and that this is reaffirmation that this is true. And that's not the case. And personally, that was definitely a large attachment that I had, is that I'll always be alone. And the other thing they showed me, and for majority of people too, is that the presence of the opposite in their current life is so great. And they just are so attached to this thought that they don't see the evidence of the opposite in their life, or they ignore it.
True, right? It's all around you, and you just sort of obliterate it
because of that attachment, right?
Attachment, yeah.
And it's a fascinating, to me, it's a fascinating thing from my perspective. And they're just like, this is what is closing your soul down from it fully expressing itself, because you're not reacting from your soul place, you're reacting from your attachment place.
Yes. And I find that those attachments too really get reinforced in the brain. The brain is a vehicle of attachments, right? It looks for attachments. It's like, okay, here's the order of the universe.
Yes.
I'm a supercomputer. This experience happened. This experience happening. Okay, I know to react and to respond this way.
Right.
X
and
happens.
what basket can I organize it into?
Exactly. It's an organizational tool.
Yes.
And that's why when we get into the heart, it's much easier for us to let go of those attachments, because we can remember the truth of our being, which is only found in the heart. It's never found in the brain.
Right.
Because the brain will tell you a story all day long about what a piece of dung you are. Right.
Yeah, right.
And how you don't deserve the love, and how, yes, you will be alone.
You'll always be alone.
That's right. Yeah. Unless you drop into your heart and get away from all of that learned response in the brain. And then you have to retrain your brain through that constant movement from the brain to the heart, brain to the heart. Oh yeah, that's right. This is what I am. Oh yeah, this is what I am.
Right. And it's that idea of that acknowledge and drop is that process.
Yes.
Because you're I think what's interesting about that process is you can identify, oh, I'm reacting from this place, and you can make a choice, and then you have an emotional connection where the feeling is so much different and so much better that it makes it easier for that process to happen, so that you recognize the attachment much more quickly.
Yeah.
And so then it moves into something in the past, something that you don't operate from, that you're not operating from that point. You're operating from something different.
Yeah, you upgrade your software. Yeah.
And that's just a practice. It's just a practice, and
it takes repetition for sure.
It takes right, and and when I practiced it, what's surprising to me is how once you say, "Oh, that is an attachment of mine," and when I react from that attachment, I'm sad, I'm angry, people don't want to be around me, all the cascade of events. But when I react, when I say, A, that's not true, I've got all this evidence of that in my life, the exact opposite, and B, I don't feel good when I react from that place, it just goes away. And you begin to recognize it more and more quickly, and the emotional happiness is such a overused word, and it's not quite the word, just the calm, the exhale that you feel from not having to defend that attachment, like like not having to once again prove that you're always going to be alone. See, that's another proof that I'm always going to be alone. Like
right. Yeah, it's a huge sense of peace that washes over you.
Yes.
And it sometimes it feels really giddy and joyful, and other times it's just like this serenity. It's like, oh, where's the serenity been all my life on this topic that I've been dragging around with me? I think we all drag around these attachments with us all the time for our whole lives. It's exhausting. And we don't even realize how hard we're working to keep ourselves in that belief and keep ourselves attached to that attachment.
To that defense mechanism.
Yes. And it is exhausting. And it's exhausting for the people in our lives as well. Oh, I know if I say this to Jeilene, she's going to do that. You know, like my husband, I'm sure he's like, oh, I can't say that because I know she'll respond this way. So people around you learn your attachments, and they start also changing their behavior because of wanting to avoid your responses too. And so this is where we can get into some of these codependent things, but also where we can get into creating other attachments in other people because of our attachments. And so we want to do that.
Right.
We want to nip it in the bud and help everybody to get that serenity for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's amazing. That's great. I love your process. I love the bend and snap because it is that easy. And it is also that easy to move from the head to the heart too. Just to acknowledge and drop.
Just acknowledge and drop. And I know, and a part of the reason it's funny for me to say is it sounds so trivial. And they keep reassuring me every time I've talked to anyone about this. They look at me like their first thing is, how am I going to be able to acknowledge when I'm reacting from there? And I said, well, their first indication is that you're reacting. Like
exactly, you're mad.
If you have this, depressive or angry or like bump in emotion that's negative, that's probably a good indicator.
Throwing things across the room.
Yeah.
Ding dong.
There's your first indicator.
You're triggered.
And then the second piece is, it sounds so simple. It sounds so Pollyanna, like, oh, just drop it. And like, and that's not me as a person. Like, I want that. Ooh, give me the work. I need to. And they're like, stop. Nothing has to be that serious and that difficult. Just take it easy. Relax. It's just let it go. It's just a
crying out loud. Humans make it so difficult.
So it's just a thought. It's just that easy. Just say, I don't want to react from that place anymore, and you don't need to do it. It's just because the alternate response will always be gentle. When you they use that word to me all the time. When you respond from your soul, it's always going to be gentle because there's no force of proof that's needed behind it.
Right.
I don't need to defend my soul. My soul just is. There's no, I'm not going to fight gravity. Like it just,
Nope. The soul is just kicking back on the lounge chair, watching the show.
yeah, it's just there.
It's just there.
So your responses from from your soul will be gentle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have enough wherewithal to when you are responding, and the thing too is the other thing I should say is that you don't have to do it before you respond. You can do it while you're in the middle of response and you're a paragraph into your rant, and you can go, oh, why am I here? What is this? And then you can choose to go back. Or after the event took place and you're in your room and you're ruminating, because that's what we all tend to do, is ruminate on sometimes when we're upset or when we're sad or something happened that affected us or we responded in a way that was probably less than ideal. Not that I would ever do such a thing.
Never.
No. And we can review it, and then we can say, I was very angry. What was I angry about? What was I really angry about? And that can lead you to an attachment. Mm-hmm. And that review, I think, is really important because then you recognize that feeling, and then when you have that feeling again, you can say, oh, attachment related.
Right.
So that's getting to that review point, I think, is really an important piece. And then you can choose to think about, what if I didn't respond from that place? What if I'm by myself and I'm only in my head? What would my real response be? What would be my honest truth response be that isn't attached to I'm never going to, they're never going to, I'll never be respected, I'll never be heard, all of those things. Mm-hmm. What is your innermost gentle response? And it's usually very different than the response that
yes. And to take it one step further, what would my life look like
if I constantly
didn't respond that way, connected to that attachment? Yeah, what would my life be like? Because I think that's a really good exploration to take and an imagination to have, because once you start imagining that, you can start having something to make it valuable and worthwhile for you. When you start imagining a different type of relationship you could be in, a different type of family situation, a different type of job work situation. What if I behave differently? What does my life look like? And then you've got something to, a goal, work towards.
Absolutely.
And I just want to emphasize too, that when we first start recognizing our attachments, it really does take practice to catch yourself, because we're all on that hair trigger all of the time. Everybody, I don't care who you are and how Shangri-La your childhood was. We all have these attachments.
Or I do have to just point this out, when I've seen spiritual people live, and you think they're in this constant state of Zen, or at least I feel like they try to sell themselves as in this constant state of Zen, and I'm in the fifth dimension all the time. And then they'll make an offhanded remark to their partner or their staff or something. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
That's where you drop from 5 to 3 real quick.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. Nobody is exempt from this. Nobody's exempt from it. Because if you were exempt for it, newsflash, you wouldn't be here.
You would not be here anymore.
You would have already ascended through this bull, right? You would have. You'd be somewhere else.
Yes, you would.
You wouldn't be here. So, we've all got it, and we're all working through the same stuff. We're all in the same boat together. But there is so much to be gained, like we said in the beginning, not just for ourselves, which first and foremost we care about, but on the behalf of the whole collective. It's when you're doing this work, you're shifting. Nothing happens in a vacuum, right? You're shifting your energy, which shifts the energy of every family member around you, which then shifts everybody they're in contact with. and so on and so forth. And
Yes.
it just expands out from there. Not to mention all the energetic beings that you can't see that are around you, that are, you know, attached to you for whatever reason, whether they're your angels or your guides or friends and relatives, ancestors, whomever it is that is sort of riding shotgun with you and is hanging around you. You start shifting in that way, and you don't even know how you might relieve them and what they have been struggling with, or maybe they're stuck and connected to earth. It's like this exponential
Yes. Yes.
relief and release of energy.
Yes. And it's because these themes that are your attachments are weaving through your whole energetic being, which encompasses all of your different life expressions, which I like to call them life expressions. You start affecting what's going on in the other life expressions as well. Mm-hmm. Which I think is an important concept to understand, because there's a reason you have so many different expressions, and that's because they're all learning the same stuff.
Yeah.
They're all supposed to be learning the same stuff, and you're given every opportunity that you possibly can to learn it. So you're also affecting that. And I'm going to give you another, this is another thing that they talk to me about, briefly, if I can.
Yeah, please.
So when you are moving from that from your soul, that's how I describe it. When you are moving from your soul and just making decisions from your soul and creating from your soul, those are, they say, rallying points or touch points that everybody on the planet is attracted to. Mm-hmm. They can't help it. They may not be able to identify exactly what it is, but they are drawn to it. They can't help it. And I'll give you a couple examples. I like artsy stuff. So, but the examples they give me, one is ridiculous, but it's just an example. And the other one is, I think people will understand a little bit more. It's, why do you think people continue to go to see the David or the Sistine Chapel after hundreds and hundreds of years?
Because it's a magnificent work of art, right?
Yes. And more importantly, it was a truest expression of Michelangelo's soul. That was his soul moving uninhibited through his body, through his hands, through his eyes, creating a direct reflection of who he was, what his energy signature was, when he was born, the time he was born, every energetic thing that happened before he entered this planet allowed him to be in the physical body that he was in, and everything that happened to him as he grew up, that he learned, that he saw, that he incorporated. And he took all of that and then allowed himself to open up completely and produce the full expression of everything that he came here with, and that everything that came before him. And that is why it's a touch point. And you can look at like people that made albums that were like crazy popular in every genre, or works of art are really because that's such a creative process that it's usually very singular to that person, and they can just open themselves up. But when you also have moments, famous speeches that people use over and over again, it's an exposure of that person's soul. And that is why it's so powerful. That is it. If you, that is what we're all here to do. And right. If we can all expose our soul like Martin Luther King or Michelangelo, like, how drastically different would the world be?
That is such an amazing example of that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's fascinating. It really is. I had never thought about that in that way before. That's really, really interesting.
It's really, and it's why when you go to, like, again, I'm going to talk about art because that's what that's the easiest example I have. When you were at a museum and you're standing in front of a piece of work that's just jaw-dropping, or you go to a museum and you look at a piece of art that's been around and been seen and talked about for thousands and thousands or hundreds of years, and it's so powerful. Or even just a piece of artwork that you see that touches you, there's a reverberation of that person's soul in that work that aligns with your soul. And some people are like, but but the ones that have the least interference from soul to creation are the ones that are the touch point pieces that are known the world over.
Yes.
And that don't ever go.
And that's kind of interesting. I'm just thinking about some of the things that we both do a lot of writing, and it's channeling. But when we've talked about this before, when you're channeling it, there's always a percentage of you there as well, because you're the go-between, right, for that information to come through. Right. So it's like there's collateral that comes along with it. So all of everything that you are when you bring the information through, and I certainly feel that when I read your excerpts that you've been posting on Instagram. And I think that that's really interesting. And this is why it's good for people to work with a lot of different healers or mystics, people that can help them see a different perspective, because we all bring a completely different energetic vibration to the table. And when you interact with that vibration, for example, you and I recently did a session because I turned 50 and I demanded it. So in that, though, it was incredibly insightful for me. And even when I thought, okay, I want to do this, but I don't really have anything to work on.
Oh, please. Wouldn't that be great?
I'm just kidding. But it was so insightful, and it was so deep, and it was so thought-provoking, and it really helped me shift the needle on some stuff that I hadn't even realized it was kind of stuck. And this is the thing, is that it's really hard sometimes to see it unless you get some help from the outside. So how would people, if they wanted to do a session with you, find you and work with you?
The easiest way to, while I'm working on all my pieces like website and all that fun stuff, the easiest way to do would be to contact me, direct message me on Instagram at The Spirited Body.
Okay.
And we can take it from there. That's the easiest way to do it.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I have a feeling that you're going to have a few people that want to experience this. It was so powerful when I did it. And again, it's the kind of thing it's almost like the nose on the end of your face. Sometimes we can't even see them. And then you start to notice it. Somebody points it out and you start to notice it all over the place. But
yeah, see how fun that is?
Sometimes I think you were just hired to infiltrate my life by my husband. I'm not really entirely sure if that's true, but
it'll be our secret.
Exactly. We've all benefited though, so it's okay.
Yes. No,
anyway.
But it's great. And it's, I mean, and I just want to say to you how incredible knowing you and sharing all the stuff with you has been, because I don't think I would be doing anything that I'm doing now if it wasn't for you. And our time that we spent together. So it's just a great connection, and it's fascinating and wonderful, and it's exciting to see what the next steps are going to be.
It is. And I think because of the way that everything that's happening right now with everybody, sheltering and having a lot of time just alone or with just a few people, having really what it is having a lot of distractions removed out of their lives. I know I was driving around every afternoon, driving my kids around, or, running here and there and trying to fit everything together. And when that's all removed and you get this moment of peace, and not to mention the energy on the planet, I feel like the veil, we used to call it the veil, right? I feel like it is so thin now that it's so easy to start to perceive our higher selves, or our soul energy, and so it's just so much you can make so much more progress right now. I think of those people in the 70s, right, when they're trying to do this, and it was just a thicker wall to try and get through. It was harder. It was like a real slog. They were
you had to go to a special store to get a book. You
had to take psychedelics up the yin yang, and that's what people were doing, and they were getting there, but they had to do. And now it's just so much easier. You you don't need the psychedelics to take the trip because your bags are packed all the time. It's just waiting for you.
Yeah.
So, so I encourage everybody to step into this process, and the benefits are immense and never ending. There's always something that we can learn about ourselves and make our lives easier. And really, we didn't come here to suffer. That's the other thing that I know we share, in that we didn't come here to suffer. We didn't come here to be miserable. We didn't come here to be unhealthy and sick and wish that we weren't here. We were clamoring to come here. We begged to come here. We wanted to come back and deal with all this stuff. No matter how bad it seems when we're here, when we're in our energetic, self, I would say, when your focus is connected more to your energetic self, because that energetic self, it's not like it goes away while you're here. It's just that that's not where your focus is right now. Your focus is right here on your physical inhabitation.
Yes.
Not a word, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
And exactly.
word. Exactly. So when your focus is here, this is what you care about, right? And this is where you're going to be spending your time. So use it wisely, because now everything that happens is like this big, sonic wave that travels through your energy field and everyone else's.
I'm going to say one more thing if I can.
Oh yeah, please.
They've been showing me a lot of this idea of why of us individually coming here, and I talked about it briefly when I talked about Michelangelo, and I want to emphasize it again because I think it's so important to understand it. That we all know, we know, you and I know, and I'm sure everyone watching this understands that the universe is constantly changing. It's constantly expanding based on what is happening in it. Mm-hmm. New creation, new ideas, new conflict, new contrast, new choices, all that stuff. And eventually it reaches a little bit of a mini pile-up point. And then the universe needs to be shaken out to incorporate all these new changes. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. And this is a process that's happening all the time. We don't have to look for major events for it to be happening. It's just happening behind the scenes. There's a buildup and an incorporation, a buildup and an incorporation. As individual souls, individual people, we are coming into this world, into the universe. We're being sort of pinched out of the universe at a unique time. That time will never be repeated because we are constantly changing the universe. So when I pass through the universe and the universe is pushing me out, that place of the universe, that second, that moment that I'm coming out, I'm imbued with everything that happened before me. And that didn't happen at any other time. And the very next person that comes through is coming through in a different universe. I should say the universe is in a different place. Mm-hmm. And all that is to mean is that makes me 100% unique. There is nothing like me anywhere else. There's nothing like any individual person anywhere else in the whole universe. You have a uniqueness that is unto you, coupled with how you grew up, what you believed, what you were taught, what you were exposed to, what you listened to, all of those things, all of your experiences, which go to say that every one of us has a unique expression that we are required to use.
Yes. Yeah. And
you have, because of that, that uniqueness is everything that you need. You have inside of you everything that you could possibly need to succeed, everything that you need to heal, everything you need to forgive, everything you need to move forward is inside of you already. You don't need to go look for it. And it makes you invaluable because that exposure, how your soul will need to be expressed, is unique to you. And that is your requirement here. It's invaluable. That is what you're here to do, is just expose that part of you as openly and clearly as possible to everyone around you. And no one else can do it. So you wanting to leave, or you treating it badly, or you ignoring it is just not an option. You should want to be, there's nobody like each person. Nobody. You can be similar. I get compared to Dan Levy all the time. Yeah, we're similar, but he ain't me and I ain't him. So it's just, that's an important concept to really understand.
That is really, really, really important and well said. And if nothing else, that should motivate every one of us to get more in touch with our soul energy and to remove some of these blocks so you can
Yeah.
feel and hear your true essence so that you can move forward and start having some fun with it.
Fun. Yes. Keyword.
Yay. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
James. I
This was
so
great.
appreciate you being here with us. I know everyone's going to love this. And we're going to have you back for sure,
Yes.
because
Love to.
every month there's a new topic. And I know that you will have wonderful things to say, to share.
Great.
So love you. Thank you.
Love you too.
So glad you're here.
Thanks
All
for
right.
having me on.
Bye.
Bye.